Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So for this episode, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm showing you an older acrylic painting that I started way back, like a couple years ago. And I finally got into my second win and I decided to finish it after all these years. So what you're looking at is actually footage I took way back in 2020. I can't believe it's been that long, but yes, this is like 4 years old and it's just been sitting around nearly finished in my studio, and I've just been staring at it. I've just kept moving it around and putting it off, and so finally I was like, you know what, I might as well just finish that. I mean, there's only a little bit more that I need to do, so I was like, okay, I'll do it. But there is a but. I will tell you ahead of time, this will not look the same after I've actually finished it. I mean, what you're staring at right now, I actually like the older version. I will just be honest, I like this older version better than the one I actually did after I modified it, quote unquote. So yeah, you see me here. I'm using, let's first get the technicalities out of the way. I'm using a wooden panel, a thick wooden panel. It's an 8-inch wood panel, and I'm using Amsterdam acrylics for this one. And the Amsterdam acrylics are a bit more fluid, so it requires a lot of layers, especially with lighter colors like yellow and the turquoise. And I think that was one of the reasons why I had such a hard time finishing it, because I was getting really impatient, and I knew that I would need, in order to get the saturation that I wanted, or the colors to pop out, I would need to do a lot of layers. And I guess I just got really tired of it at some point, and so I stopped, and I never really got to pick it up again or motivate myself to do it again. I think another reason why was that I was basically just winging this. I didn't have a proper reference photo for the girl or the cat, and so I was just painting it, you know, however I wanted. And that was fun, kind of, but at the same time I would hit pockets of indecision and I wouldn't know what to do. And at that time I really didn't know what I was doing, because I was just starting with acrylics, and or at least, you know, getting to know acrylics. And even now I still get very frustrated with it, especially because I hopped onto painting with oils, and I would always get really frustrated every time I would go back to acrylics, because I would need to build up the layers, especially since I was using more fluid acrylics instead of the heavy body kind, which would have been much more ideal had I actually purchased them, but I didn't. So I'm stuck with the fluid acrylics, and I really don't want to waste them. So yeah. This is about where I left off the painting back in 2020. I'll be working on it in present times in the next clip. Hey everyone, so today we're going to be finishing this painting. I started this way back, and for some reason I just never got around to finishing it. There's quite a few things I would like to change. I originally used acrylics on this one, but today I don't feel like busting out all of my acrylic paints. So I decided that I'll just use Posca markers. They're still acrylic, but at least they're easier to handle. And I only have a limited set of colors, so I don't really know how I'm gonna make this work. I still might need to bust out my acrylics for finishing touches, so we'll see how that will go. But I'll make the most out of my Posca markers for now and see how far I go ahead and reach with this one. So yeah, let's start. Okay, hi, this is editing Artscribbler here, and as I mentioned, you know, I'm using acrylic markers for this one instead of using my traditional Amsterdam acrylics, and I don't know what I was thinking about using Posca markers. First off, they're very difficult to blend. I mean, you have to have a good range of colors in order for you to get good blends and subtle variations. And I never really thought about it before, but I realized that Posca markers are incredibly perfect for more graphic work. And I think that's what they were initially made for, you know. And with the original style of the painting that I did, it was more realistic, not super realistic, but you know, still illustrative, but kind of leaning towards the more realistic side. And once I started using the Posca markers, I realized that I needed to make the painting look a little bit more graphic than in order to accommodate the colors that I had. And that is where all the troubles began. Because as you can see, you know, I started panicking and I was like, this isn't looking the way I wanted. And I started adding black and I was like, no, the black doesn't work. I'm gonna layer it with pink tones instead because I had those markers. And yeah, it was just a mess. And I was just on salvage mode by this time, and I was like, oh man, I never should have touched it. The good thing though about Posca markers is that you can layer them on top of each other quite easily, and they will cover up the previous layers with ease, although you still have to build them up quite a bit because sometimes when you apply them they are a bit transparent, especially with the lighter shades like the yellows and the pinks, so you have to go over them. The reds looked beautiful, but yeah, other than that, I really struggled with this, with using them on this painting. At this point, it was just me on salvage mode. As I mentioned, there were many times or instances where I just wanted to walk away and be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm gonna start a new one. But I decided that, you know, we started this, so let's just finish and see how far we can take it. And I'm drying the Posca markers with a hair dryer because they would sometimes the paint that would come on the tips would be they would flood basically, and they'd end up being very thick, and I'd have to spread them out just to get them to cover a certain area. And by this time I was like, okay, I give up on the Posca markers and let me take out the brush, because yeah, I got the 5M tips and they're a bit blunt, so they're not great for details. And yeah, this is how she turned out. And I didn't like how she looked, but I tried very, very hard to make the most of it. I was really just crushed that she didn't look the same as she did before, and I really preferred the first version more than this one because I just made her look a little too much Barbie instead of, you know, like an actual human face, or at least closer to a human face. But yeah, I still tried my best to salvage it as much as possible. This time, as you can see, I'm using a brush. I stopped using the Posca markers, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna use that for more graphic work from now on, and I won't rely on it for more realistic work. So yeah, And I'm adding the details to the hair and just cleaning up really the strokes that the Posca markers made, because it didn't look nice, to be honest, at least for me. And I really think that I prefer using just a brush. Anyway, sorry I've been so chatty in this video. It's just that I had a lot of thoughts about this painting and the process that I went through. I also learned a lot of lessons, basically, to just, one is that I just need to stick to one style and trust my gut on what I like, instead of trying to accommodate the materials that I'm using. So here I am adding the last finishing touches to this one. I'm cleaning up the edges and I'm creating a little border thingy that I don't know, I really was in salvage mode at this point, and I just wanted to finish everything. And I also added a thin coat of varnish to this one just to help protect it. I can't say I'm happy with the result, because I really am not. I sound negative about it, but really this actually taught me a lot about what I can do and what I can't do with Posca markers, as well as what style I like. I mean, I think doing graphic work has its advantages, but then at the same time, I really just prefer a more realistic look. I'm using a Gambar varnish for this one, and putting in a very thin coat just to help protect it from dust and everything. So it works great for acrylic paintings. And this tiny painting is the one I made with Posca markers. I think that was the reason why I felt like, oh, I could just use Posca markers for this other painting too. And yeah, that didn't work. And I've learned my lesson. So these are the two paintings. Thank you guys for joining me on this very chatty acrylic painting fail, I guess. And I'll work on the sketchbook sessions next. See ya.